San Francisco glittered that night, the city humming with wealth and whispered ambition. Inside the Grand Meridian Hotel, chandeliers burned like captured suns, scattering gold over people who measured worth by diamonds and secrets. Emma Carter adjusted the cuffs of her black and white uniform, forcing her shaking hands to still. The uniform was clean, but faded, pressed with the kind of care born from desperation. She'd promised herself she wouldn't bring her daughter to work again, but promises meant little when the babysitter cancelled, and the rent notice sat like a threat on the fridge door. 7-year-old Lila walked beside her, small fingers gripping her mother's hand, eyes wide as moonlight. Every reflection in the crystal mirrored another version of wonder wine glasses taller than her arm. A string quartet weaving melodies she didn't recognize. Laughter that sounded rehearsed. "Stay behind the curtain, sweetheart," Emma whispered, guiding her to a quiet corner hidden by thick velvet drapes. "Draw in your notebook." "Okay. Don't talk to anyone. I'll check on you when I can." Lila nodded, brave but solemn. Her mother's tired smile was all the permission she needed to disappear into her hiding place. From there, she could see the world through a sliver in the fabric, a narrow keyhole into another life. She watched women glide across marble floors in gowns that shimmered like liquid light, and men whose confidence filled the room before they spoke. Their words rippled through the air, and Lila listened. She always listened. Most children heard sound. Lila heard meaning. Every syllable English, French, Spanish. Mandarin folded itself neatly into understanding as if her mind had been waiting for them. She couldn't explain it. She didn't know why language came to her as naturally as breathing. She only knew she could never tell anyone. Not even her mother. Because gifts like hers made grown-ups nervous. As the orchestra shifted to a slower piece, a new current stirred in the room. The crowd seemed to tilt subtly toward a single figure entering from the far end. Conversation dropped to murmurs. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim in deference. He was tall. The kind of tall that drew silence. His suit was charcoal, tailored so precisely, it moved like shadow. Eyes dark, unreadable. People parted for him without being asked. Lila didn't know his name, but she felt his power in her chest. A vibration more than a sound. Later, she would learn that everyone in that room feared him or owed him something. His name was Damien Cross, the man who controlled half the city's underground world with the elegance of a king and the precision of a predator. To the crowd, he was a benefactor, a silent partenaire, a necessary evil wrapped in perfect manners. To those who truly knew him, he was the one line no one dared cross. From her hidden corner, Lila tilted her head, listening not to him, but to the 4 men who entered moments later. Polite smiles, crisp suits, movements too synchronized to be casual. Their language wasn't English. It flowed sharp and fast, syllables slicing softly through the air. Japanese. No one else noticed, but Lila understood every word. "The drink will be switched. Special vintage. 20 minutes after he finishes it." Her little heart stumbled. She watched them fan out across the ballroom. One near the bar, one near the kitchen, another blending among the guests. The 4th carried a small wooden box, with characters carved into the lid. Beautiful, intricate, terrifying. Lila didn't know what to do. She was only 7, but she knew someone was going to die. She peeked toward her mother Emma, balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes, weaving through laughter and perfume. Lila wanted to call out, but her voice would never reach above the music. Her small fingers clenched around her colored pencil until it snapped in two. She looked again at the man they planned to kill. Damien Cross stood near the head table, speaking softly to a city councilman who nodded too quickly. He looked untouchable, eternal, yet in 20 minutes, he would be gone. Lila pressed her palms together. thinking hard. Her mother always said to stay hidden, to stay safe. But safety meant nothing if someone died right in front of her. The chandelier light fractured into stars as she stepped from behind the curtain. Lila darted between evening gowns and polished shoes, her heartbeat thundering louder than the orchestra. Guests gasped as the small figure appeared from nowhere. Copper curls flying, eyes burning with something fierce and impossible. Emma turned at the worst moment, just as the head server presented a glass of pale liquid to Damien Cross. The drink gleamed under the light, like molten silver. "Ouais," the cry tore from Lila's throat. She reached the table, breathless, and slammed her tiny hand into the glass. It shattered across the marble, shards sparkling like snow. The sound froze the room. Every conversation died mid-word. Emma's face drained of color. "Lila," she whispered, mortified, lunging forward to grab her daughter. "Oh my God. I am so sorry." "Sir, she's just a child." But Damien Cross didn't move. He didn't even blink. His gaze found the little girl crouched among the broken glass, her hand bleeding where crystal had bitten skin. Something in her eyes caught him. Not fear, not guilt, but determination. Lila's voice trembled. "They wanted to hurt you." The room seemed to tilt. "They said it in Japanese," she went on, whispering so softly, Emma barely heard. "The men with the black ties. They said you'd drink it, and your heart would stop." Emma froze, torn between disbelief and terror. "Lila, enough please." But Damien raised a hand, silencing her. His expression remained carved from ice, but a flicker of something interest perhaps moved behind his eyes. He turned his gaze toward the far end of the ballroom, where the 4 Japanese men stood too still, pretending calm. With a subtle gesture, he summoned 2 of his security men. They moved instantly. Kieras, shadows. The tension snapped like a wire. Guests pretended to resume their conversations. Laughter forced. Glasses trembling in nervous hands. But the center of the room belonged entirely to Damien, Emma, and the little girl who had just rewritten the night, Emma Gnelt, pressing a napkin against Lila's bleeding hand. "Sweetheart, why would you say something like that? You can't just, because it's true." Lila whispered, her eyes lifted toward Damien's, steady and unafraid. "They said your name. For a long, impossible second." Damien Cross said nothing. He studied the mother first, the protective posture, the worn shoes, the exhaustion that came from years of surviving. Then he looked at the child again. "How does she understand Japanese?" he asked quietly. Emma blinked. She doesn't. She's 7. Lila's reply came clear and simple. "I understand all of them. Every language. If I hear it once, I know it." Silence spread like ripples through water. The head server stammered an apology. But Damien didn't acknowledge him. His mind was already racing calculations. Threats. Possibilities. Children didn't fabricate plots with that kind of precision. The bottle still gleamed on the tray, unopened. A faint chemical sheen danced at the bottom. He looked at his security chief. "Test it." The man obeyed. Then Damien returned his gaze to Emma. "You and your daughter will stay until I decide what happens next." "That won't be necessary," Emma said quickly, panic edging her voice. "We'll leave right now." She didn't mean any harm. Damien's tone was soft, but final. It wasn't a request. Around them, the orchestra resumed playing too loudly, as if volume could erase what had just happened. Waiters began sweeping glass, whispering apologies, pretending normalcy, but the air remained electric, charged with something unspoken. Damien's men escorted the 4 suspects discreetly toward the exits. No one protested. In the corner, the bottle of special vintage glowed faintly under the lights, its contents more beautiful and more lethal than anyone wanted to admit. Emma lifted Lila into her arms, clutching her close. She could feel the child's heartbeat racing against her chest. "You can't just take us," she murmured. "We don't belong in your world." Damien looked at her, and for the briefest moment, something human crossed his face. "You entered it the moment she saved my life." He turned, issuing quiet orders to his men. The chaos of the gala faded behind him, replaced by the measured rhythm of power, reclaiming control. Emma followed reluctantly, every instinct screaming to run, but the memory of that shattered glass held her still. Somewhere in the noise of the night, she realized the truth. They had stepped into something far larger than either of them understood, and in Damien's dark eyes, beneath the cold calculation, she thought she saw a question, a flicker of recognition, almost as if he had seen her before. But that was impossible. Wasn't it? As the elevator doors closed behind them, the music of the ballroom dimmed to a distant echo, leaving only the pulse of three strangers, bound by one impossible act of fate. For Emma, it was the beginning of fear. For Lila, it was the moment her secret gift became a curse. And for Damien Cross, it was the first crack in a heart he had sworn would never feel again. The elevator ride to Damien's penthouse felt endless. The silence between them was sharp enough to cut through marble. Emma held her daughter close, her heart pounding with questions she didn't dare voice. Lila rested her head on her mother's shoulder, wide eyes, studying the mirrored walls that reflected a world she'd never belonged to. When the doors opened, Emma expected coldness, steel, and glass, and distance. What she found instead was a strange kind of beauty. The penthouse stretched out like a secret, every surface precise, every corner humming with quiet power. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city in diamonds of light. Damien gestured for them to sit. "You'll be safe here," he said simply, his voice deep enough to make the air vibrate. It wasn't a reassurance. It was a fact. Emma wanted to argue, to take her daughter and disappear into the night. But where could she go? Someone had tried to kill this man. Someone with the power to turn poison into a whisper. And now, because Lila had spoken, because she'd stepped out of the shadows, they were caught inside his orbit. Lila found a quiet spot near the glass wall and pulled out her notebook. Within minutes, her small hands moved in quick, certain strokes, sketching the faces of the men she'd seen at the gala. Not just one or two, every feature, every angle, every flicker of expression captured with eerie precision. Damien watched her work in silence. His gaze was not soft, but it wasn't cruel either. It was the look of a man, calculating, learning, watching the puzzle pieces rearrange themselves in front of him. "How does she do that?" he asked quietly. Half to himself, Emma didn't know how to answer. She'd asked herself the same question for years. Ever since Lila was 4. She'd known things she shouldn't, languages, codes, songs in dialects no one had taught her. Emma had stopped trying to explain it. All she knew was that her daughter was extraordinary, and that the world could never find out. The hours stretched long. Outside, the city burned in neon. Inside, time folded in on itself. Damien's men came and went, whispering updates about the suspects, the poisoned wine, the unknown client who had ordered the hit. Every name they mentioned was foreign to Emma. But one word kept repeating, a word that made Damien's expression tighten every time he heard it. Yakuza. Later that night, when Lila had finally fallen asleep on the couch, Damien poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and offered one to Emma. She shook her head. He took a slow sip and leaned against the window, his reflection lost in the city lights. "They've been trying to reach me for months," he said. "The Japanese syndicate. They've taken contracts before, but never this bold. Whoever they sent tonight wanted me. Erased quietly. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Why tell me this? Because you and your daughter are now part of it. The words chilled her. We don't want to be part of anything. I just want to keep her safe. His gaze flicked to Lila sleeping on the couch. She saved my life. That makes her a target too. Emma turned away, tears stinging her eyes. You don't know what it's like, she said softly. Losing someone because of secrets. Something in Damien's expression changed. He set down his glass. Your husband, he said. His tone careful. She nodded. He died in a car accident 3 years ago. At least that's what they told me. But the reports never made sense. He was an accountant. Quiet, kind. He loved numbers and puzzles. He wasn't reckless. Damien's stillness was sudden. Absolute. The name had echoed in his mind from the moment she'd said it at the gala. But now it struck home with final clarity. He knew that name. The man she had lost, he had once worked for him. His jaw tightened, though his voice stayed calm. What was his name? Michael Carter. The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in, I knew him, Damien said at last. Years ago. Emma stared at him. Disbelief, carving through her fear. You knew my husband. Damien's eyes darkened. Yes. But I never knew he had a wife. Or a daughter. He didn't say the rest, that Michael Carter had been more than an accountant. That he had handled the finances that kept Damien's empire invisible. That he disappeared after someone leaked information to the FBI. Now, staring at the woman before him, Damien realized fate had a cruel sense of humor. The child who saved his life belonged to the man whose betrayal had once nearly destroyed it. But he said nothing. Not yet. Morning came softly, brushing light across a skyline that never slept. Emma woke on the edge of a couch, too elegant for comfort. Her daughter curled against her side. Damien was already awake. His presence quiet, but consuming as always. Reviewing files on a digital screen, when he turned to her, there was something different in his face, an exhaustion she hadn't seen before. And something heavier beneath it, guilt. I need to tell you the truth, he said. About your husband. Emma froze. The room seemed to shrink. Damien gestured toward the screen. Numbers and names filled the display bank accounts. Shell corporations. Offshore movements of money. She couldn't comprehend. Michael wasn't just an accountant. He was my financial strategist. The best I ever had. But he was also working with the FBI. Emma's breath caught. That's not possible. It is, Damien said. He was feeding them information, trying to expose my competitors. Maybe even me. I don't know his full plan. But before he could finish, the Yakuza found out. The night he died, it wasn't an accident. Emma's knees nearly gave out. Her voice broke around the words. You're saying he was murdered? Yes. Damien said quietly. By the same syndicate that came for me last night. The room blurred. Grief rose like a wave she hadn't expected to feel again. But underneath it was something sharper, betrayal. Her husband had lied. He'd hidden a life. A purpose. Maybe even his death. Lila stirred awake. Rubbing her eyes, she looked between them, sensing the weight in the air. You're talking about Dad. Emma crouched beside her. Sweetheart. Go back to sleep. But Lila shook her head. No. I need to hear it. Her eyes so blue. So knowing fixed on Damien, he was helping you. And helping someone else. Damien hesitated. He was trying to help everyone. But he played a dangerous game. Lila bit her lip. Thinking, maybe that's why I can do what I do. Emma frowned. What do you mean? Lila lifted her notebook. The sketches were more detailed. Now lines of faces, snippets of languages, strange patterns that looked like maps of sound. Dad said he saw the world in numbers. Maybe I see it in words. Damien studied her, struck by the eerie logic of it. He had seen patterns in men all his life. What made them loyal? What made them break? But this child saw through a different kind of code. A gift that defied reason. Emma's voice trembled. You're telling me everything I knew about him was a lie? That his death, our life, it was all connected to you? Damien's eyes softened. I'm telling you I owe him my life. And now I owe you both. Her anger cracked under the sincerity in his tone. He wasn't a man used to admitting weakness. That alone made the words real. Damien stepped closer, his voice low, almost a vow. Whatever comes next, I will keep you safe. I couldn't save him, but I can save you. For a moment, she saw something raw in his eyes. Regret. Sorrow. Longing. The distance between them felt smaller than it should have, and for the first time since her husband's death, Emma let herself breathe. That night, the city outside was quiet, but too quiet. Lila sat near the window, sketching again. Emma stood in the kitchen, trying to find calm in small rituals, boiling water, pouring tea, watching the steam curl and fade. Damien had been on the phone for hours, issuing orders in clipped tones. Every so often, he glanced toward them, as if checking that they were still there. Still, real. Then, without warning, the world shattered. The first explosion came from the parking level below, deep, thunderous, shaking the building from its bones. Glass trembled in its frames. The lights flickered. Damien's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Get away from the windows. Gunfire followed sharp, relentless, echoing through the night. His men moved fast. But the attack was too precise, too coordinated. Someone had betrayed him. Emma grabbed Leela, heart slamming against her ribs. What's happening? They found us, Damien said. Tanaka's men. Lila clutched her mother's hand. They're coming up the back stairwell, she whispered. Eyes unfocused, Damien turned sharply. How do you know that? I can hear them, she said. They're talking 2 floors down. They think the elevator's locked. Damien didn't question it. He pulled open a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a narrow steel corridor. Move. They ran. The hallway led into a service tunnel beneath the building. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of danger. Alarms wailed above them as they emerged into the open dock. The city lights glittered on the bay. A black speedboat waited, engines humming. Damien helped them aboard. The moment he hit the throttle, bullets cut through the air behind them, shattering the night into shards of chaos. Emma held Delilah close, crouched low, as the city blurred into streaks of gold and darkness. The waves slapped against the hull. Damien's hands were steady on the controls, eyes fixed forward, but his shoulder jerked suddenly, a crimson bloom spreading across his sleeve. Emma gasped. You're hit. Keep her down, he said through clenched teeth. The wind tore at their hair. The rain came down in needles. When they finally reached the shadows beneath the old bridge, Damien Slovet. The adrenaline fading into silence, he stumbled back, gripping the railing as his breath came ragged. Emma caught him before he fell. Her hands pressed against the wound, her fingers slick with blood. Stay still. He gave a faint, humorless smile. You give orders well. Don't talk, she snapped. But her voice shook. You're losing blood. He looked up at her, eyes dark and unguarded. No one's ever risked their life for me before, he whispered. Except your husband, and now you. Emma's throat tightened. Don't make this about debts. It's not, he said softly. It's about trust. The rain softened around them, turning to mist. Lila slept against the bench. Exhaustion finally winning. The boat drifted quietly in the current. For a moment, the war outside felt far away. Emma's hand lingered on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall beneath her palm. In that fragile quiet, she saw him not as a kingpin or a monster, but as a man flawed, haunted, human. He caught her gaze and didn't look away. The distance between them closed like the hush before a confession. Why are you looking at me like that? She whispered. Because I finally see you, he said. And maybe you're the only thing I've ever wanted to protect without a reason. Her heart betrayed her with its answer. She didn't trust him. Not completely. But somewhere between fear and gratitude, something softer had begun to grow. The horizon was pale with approaching dawn when Damien finally spoke again. Voice low. Determined. We're not done yet. I promised it keep you safe. And I will. Emma nodded. Tears caught in her lashes. Then we do it together. And as the first light touched the water, 3 souls bound by danger, by loss, by something that felt dangerously like love, sailed toward a future none of them could yet name. The warehouse loomed like a ghost from another life, half buried beneath years of dust and silence. Hidden deep along the fog-choked edge of the bay, it was the place Michael Carter had built in secret. A failsafe for the day, truth would demand a reckoning. Inside, the walls hummed with old power. Screens flickered awake as Damien entered, his bloodied arm bound, his eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Emma followed, holding Lila's hand. The child looked around the dim room as if recognizing something she'd never seen before. This is Daddy's place, she whispered. I can feel him here. On the main console, a single terminal blinked. Damien set a weathered key drive into the slot, and lines of encrypted data spilled across the screens. Financial networks, coded transfers, names of politicians and syndicate leaders tied to the Yakuza empire. Lila stepped closer, studying the shifting symbols. Her eyes moved the way her father's once had fast, certain, absorbing patterns invisible to anyone else. There's a message inside the code, she said softly. He left it for us. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, translating 5 languages in seconds. Japanese, Russian, English, Mandarin, and something older, almost musical. As the final layer unlocked, the screens turned white, then filled with a single sentence in her father's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means, my work is done. Truth must survive me. How? The data unfolded, like a confession and a weapon. All at once, a map of corruption stretching across continents. Every transaction, every bribe, every murder that had kept the syndicate alive, now lay bare before them. Emma's eyes filled with tears. He did all this to stop them. He died for it. Damien's voice was quiet, but resolute. Then we finish what he started. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. The number connected to a woman who had hunted him for years, an FBI agent named Harlow. His voice was steady. You wanted Tanaka's empire. Come get it. Hours later, the night erupted. Federal strike teams descended on the Yakuza compound like thunder. Helicopters sliced through fog, spotlights cutting the dark to ribbons. The air burned with gunfire, and the echo of justice, long delayed. Damien watched from the warehouse monitors, his face unreadable, as everything he'd built, the empire that once defined him, crumbled under the weight of his choice. For the first time in his life, he didn't fight to keep what was his. He fought to let it go. When the last explosion faded, The sky began to pale. Emma turned to him, unsure what to say. Gratitude and grief mixed in her eyes. "You gave them everything," she murmured. He shook his head slowly. "I gave you everything. The rest was never mine to keep." Outside, the sirens rose and fell like waves, carrying away the empire of a man who had finally learned what redemption costs. Weeks passed. The world moved on, though for Emma and Lila, time had taken a quieter shape, a small cottage by the coast. New names on their mail, laughter soft enough to feel like healing. The past had not disappeared. It simply lived in gentler colors now. One evening, Lila sat curled on the couch, listening to the evening news. Her mother was in the kitchen, humming faintly to the rhythm of ordinary life. Then Lila froze. "Mom," she said softly. "Listen." From the television came a familiar voice, low, deliberate, unmistakable. Damien Cross, the once feared Mafia king, speaking at a federal press conference. He was cooperating with authorities, his testimony dismantling layers of corruption that reached far beyond San Francisco. Emma leaned in the doorway, watching the screen. The man who had once ruled shadows now stood in the light, calm and unflinching, offering the truth instead of power. Lila smiled faintly. He kept his promise. Emma's eyes softened. Maybe monsters can change. Outside, the wind carried the scent of salt and rain, far beyond the coastline. Parked on a lonely stretch of road, overlooking the cottage, a dark car sat with its engines silent. Inside, Damien watched through the windshield, a faint smile touching his mouth as he saw Lila's laughter through the window. He whispered into the quiet, almost as if she could hear him. "You saved me too." And as the tide rolled in beneath the fading light, the man who had lived by power finally drove away with peace in his heart, leaving behind the only two people who had ever taught him what salvation truly meant. If this story moved you, if you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the redemption, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments, what moment touched you the most? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss the next dark romance story. Your support means everything. Every comment, every share helps these stories come to life. So hit that drop your thoughts below. And share this video with someone who loves a little danger wrapped in love.